designed specifically to be like melodic and triumphant and rockin', of course, but also really to have a lot of small techniques that are kind of specific to the guitar. So I'm going to start off with just the melody, and then we'll start adding those levels of articulation on top to show how it changes the feel and like kind of not just the performance, but like the experience of listening and playing it. So this is the basic melody. And that's fine. I'm playing the notes, but it lacks almost all of the character of the actual recording of the vision of the song. Man, I'm really using some hippie terms here, I'm realizing. So the first thing we're going to do is just add some vibrato. And if you haven't done any work or time just feeling out the vibrato of how you play the guitar and the different ways that you can really accentuate a note, just take like a couple minutes just for like one day and be like, oh, actually there's a lot of options here. So any note here that we're going to play for any amount of time that is significant or where we want to accentuate is going to get some vibrato. So the first note. Already starting to sound a little bit better. The next one is slides, and I don't know how slides are so underutilized for a lot of guitarists when I'm watching them play. So there's 4 basic types of slides. I've made sure all of them are in here. There's the slide up, the slide down, what I call an approach slide. So you've got a note you want to go to, and you're going to slide to it, but you're not really coming from anywhere. It's just... I can start from many different places, but you get the same kind of effect. There's the what I call an escape slide, which is you play a note and then you slide to nowhere. So I'm not actually sliding down. I actually do this a lot in the other direction too. And then there's what I call a boomerang, which goes in one direction and then back. So up 2 frets, or down 3. There's a lot of... It wasn't exactly 3, that was like 3.2. But you get the idea. Boomerang, you start somewhere, you go somewhere else and come back. So the first 2 notes in this are actually slides. We're going to use an approach slide to get to the first note. And since we linger on it, we'll use some vibrato. And then the next 2 notes, we're going to actually slide. And then when we get to the second time here, slide back down to the 6th fret on your 2nd finger to make the fingering of this 5th fret easier. And this is a technique that I think a lot of guitarists use that's really subtle, and you watch some folks use it, and it really says a lot about how they're thinking ahead where they're playing. Because what I'm doing there is I'm using a slide to mask a position change. Otherwise it's... and you have to like do this jump. And there is a barely discernible moment of silence in there. But with the slide, like I've filled out entire space, and if I want to, I can let those notes ring out on top of each other. Not something I would be able to do if I was jumping strings and frets. And then we're going to use an escape slide on that. For the second half, a boomerang there, and then the rest of it's the same. So with the slides and vibrato, it's like this. Exit slide on the end there too. I forgot to mention that earlier. So the next couple things are pretty simple. We're going to add a bend. So the first time we do, first time of that will be a bend. It's the only bend in the whole thing. So that's... That wasn't very smooth, but those were the right notes. And the last thing we'll do is add some hammer-ons and some pull-offs. So we'll do... every time we go from 7 to 9 on the G string here, every time we get to that note, we're going to hammer onto it. So the note won't. And that's a hammer on. So that entire phrase right there on the G string is a slide, hammer, boomerang, slide. So with all the slides, hammer-ons, bends, and vibrato, it's going to look like this. No, it's not. I totally picked that note. It's supposed to be a hammer-on. So I'm going to really point out that this next one is one of my all-time favorites, and I just don't see people use it that often. Like the slides, I think that it is, it's kind of gotten overlooked, and I'm just going to rake as I get to specific notes. So at that, with all the last two phrases, before I play the first notes of each of those, I'm just going to mute all the strings above it. Instead of going, I'm going to go. No, I'm not. I'm going to go. So with the raking, you get this kind of like sound before. A lot of people call it like a throaty sound, and it kind of lets the listener know that something's about to come, but it doesn't give them much notice. So you get a lot of character out of it. So the whole thing with that would be. So that's the main theme of this song. Now, before we move on, I don't know where I'm going to put the tab on the screen. Maybe it's above me or below me. But take a look at it right now. It's got all the articulation on it. For a moment, I'm going to remove all the articulation. And just... Okay, yeah, look at that. All right, that's the basic melody. Let's bring it back. All right, cool. So now that it's back, what I think hopefully you're seeing is that almost all of the notes that are important notes that aren't just like passing notes, you're arriving at them. All of those have some type of articulation either coming into while they're being played or out of them. Some of them have multiples, like even the first has multiple. So once I noticed that when I was watching people play, and I started realizing like, oh, I've gotten to the point where I'm doing a lot of that stuff, like instrument-specific stuff on melody lines, it really made a big difference. So I just want to point that out. Like once you get to a certain point where you feel like you're comfortable with the song and you know the melody and you can play the melody, like you're only about halfway there, honestly. Like take the extra time to figure out what to either like learn if you're trying to emulate someone's style or play someone else's song, or figure out like what are the articulations that you would use to really make it yours and not just some notes on a page. I think it's really important for the guitar. Okay, so the bridge starts out with just a G major scale, but it's heavily palm muted and all down picked. It's an awkward place to play that, I guess. I guess most people wouldn't play it there, but it worked for me. And then it drops into two shapes that I think are really important for lead players to know if you don't use them a lot. It's a major 7th shape. It's F major 7. So. And then this is a dominant 7th shape. So that's a G dominant 7th, so F major 7, G dominant 7. And then I play a bunch of harmonics that are really just the notes in the G major chord. So I just went... So I just ended on a G. So the next two notes of the chord, if I was to continue it, would be... So I know where to play those on the guitar. I'm not going to go into the whole... my understanding of where they are, but I thought it'd be fun to put in here. And I think you saw me... just for style points, really. So that's the 12th fret of the B, and the 5th fret of the D and the G. And that's... So it's like I continued the chord. So I'll often use like squeal noises or harmonics or something like that at the end of not just a phrase, but like the turnaround, like you're turning what Tim Pierce calls the corner. You're turning the corner into the next part, and something funky like that. It's like, wait, what did I just hear? Those were the right notes. It was just in a really weird way. You've gone out there far enough that's like, yeah, I'm going to remind you of what the main theme is. So we'll go right back into the main theme, bring the listener back to a place where they're comfortable. I should also note that the reason that shows, I mean, this whole song is in kind of A major, but the bridge, I never play an A chord, but it implies that I've switched to A minor because I'd go down to F major 7 and G7. The key that has both of those chords in it is A minor. So if that doesn't make sense, that's fine. You can look that stuff up later, but that's why the bridge feels so different, and there's this, it creates this tension because you're in a related key, but it's the minor, and then we come back around back into the major also. And I didn't forget about the intro, but intro is just two inversions of the A chord with open A string. As long as you got that open A string, it really holds things together even all the way back. So then the next thing I do is just I start on an A, and we just do an A major 7 arpeggio. So it's just A, G sharp, E, and C sharp. Those are the notes in A major 7. I just play them in order, descending. And because it's ending on an A, use the open A string at the end. So the beginner / rhythm part for this song is really designed to teach a lot of the basics of beginning guitar. There's 3 parts to it, and I'm going to go through them in order of simplest to most difficult, or most complex, I should say. The first part is really just 3 notes. It's the second part of the song, but the first part over which we'll be going is really just 3 notes. And it's 3, 2, 0 on the low E string. Super simple, but the whole purpose of this being in here is to get you to start thinking about transitions, how you transition in and out of things. So this is going to be, you could probably already play that, right? The next thing we're going to do is power chords, or 5th chords. And the first one that we're going to do is on the 1st fret, so 1st position, 1st finger on the 1st fret of the low E, 3rd fret of the next 2 strings. I'm going to play with my ring finger and my pinky. So it's 1, 3, 3 in terms of frets. And it's going to be 1st finger, ring, and pinky. You might see people bar this, also a totally valid way of doing things. I'm going to advocate using your pinky on when you're playing along with this to build some strength in that pinky. It's very easy to neglect your pinky, but it becomes a very important part of your playing eventually. So if you haven't played 5th chords or power chords yet, these are the building blocks of a ton of guitar stuff. One of the things you'll notice when I'm playing those 3 strings, there's no open strings, so I can move this around. We're going to take a look at that in a second. But this part is just going to be this chord, and we're going to play it 7 times, but we're going to build the volume as we're playing it. So 7 nice even strokes, all down, and I'm going to move it up 2 frets to the 3rd fret. So in context, those 2 are going to sound like this back to back. The third part is probably the most difficult, but seems the easiest. And it's really just an open A chord. You see people play it like this sometimes. You see people play it like this sometimes. I'm going to play it like this, barring the 2nd fret. And the strumming pattern is going to sound like this. Now, part of why I advocate playing it like this is because eventually this opens up your fingers to do other things. So If I was playing it like this or like this, sure, I could add some open strings or maybe that 3rd fret. But by barring it, eventually, if you get used to this this type of fingering, it'll allow me to do some bigger extensions because it frees up my other fingers. So I wouldn't be able to do that if my fingers were in this position. I also think while you're starting to learn the basics of the guitar, it's really important to build the strength to be able to bar. Now you'll see me, I've been playing the guitar for like almost 30 or over 30 years now. So you'll see my fingering kind of looks like this. This might be difficult for you early on because you might not have the dexterity or the strength to be able to bar all 3 of these frets. So, or strings, same fret, 3 strings. So one of the things that can be very helpful is if you bring your thumb down behind, that'll give you this nice kind of pinching action, which will give you the strength early on to be able to do a bar. If you think about it, if I was going to pick something up off the ground, I wouldn't pick it up on that part of my thumb. If it was heavy, I would certainly pick it up with this part, like a direct pinch. So that can really help when you're starting to learn bar chords eventually. I'd see people like this, and it's like, oh, I can't get my fingers to do it. Anytime you need extra strength with your hand, if you bring your thumb down and adjust your position, it'll give you some more strength behind it. It can also be very helpful for stretching. Just something to keep in mind. Your thumb doesn't need to be planted in one spot. So I'm going to play this open A chord as this with this strumming pattern. It'll sound like this. Now, if you aren't familiar with this chord, it's going to take some time. So what you can do is you can start with just the open A and the 2nd fret of the D, and then start bringing in the other strings so you can get all 3 of them down. Now, if you haven't built up a strumming yet, so that pattern feels weird, you might be doing something like this, and a lot of people do this early on. And I see them often like really clinch the pick, sometimes with 3 or 4 fingers even, and just kind of go. Those are the right notes, that's the right rhythm, but it's a lot harder to transition in and out of this part using strict down strumming like that. So when I'm playing it, you'll see me doing a fluid, loose-wristed rhythm, like a very steady rhythm with the hand that's going back and forth. If that hasn't been built up and you're playing it, don't worry, we're going to talk about that, well, literally right now. What we're going to start doing is just playing the full chord and then hitting just the lowest note. And we're going to do that with just downstrokes. So this is a great way when you're starting to write songs you're like, I think this chord progression will work, but what if I go, I don't know, C to G to D major or something like that. Okay, that sounds good. You can apply a simple strumming pattern like this to that, and all of a sudden it might sound like a song. It's simple, but it's starting to get there. So that's a great building block pattern to start using in your playing in general. Let's bring that back to that A major. Once you get this going, it's feeling comfortable. We're going to replace that single note, a single string hit with a quick down up. So it'll be. And now you've got something that's starting to sound like a song. Let's try that with that other chord progression. We can see how just applying a simple strumming pattern can really bring things to life. Now, what I used in this was a very common strumming pattern. That's down, 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 up, down, down, and then a very quick down, up at the end that's kind of quiet. So the whole thing is going to look like this. I'll play it kind of slow. It might take some time to get used to that and to not hit all the extra strings or to figure out how to mute them. But that's what this is all about. It's about learning, getting better. Once your fingers know how to do it, your brain doesn't have to think about it that much anymore. So I'm going to play all 3 of the parts in context. I'm just going to play that main part only twice, and then I'll do the bridge, and then back to the main part. So you can see that the transitions are really where the magic happens. And don't forget to work on your dynamics as well. Getting louder and quieter. All of these are the building blocks of being able to play songs kind of correctly. Not just playing the right notes and the right rhythm, but getting the dynamics correctly and the feel of the song, being able to emote. You got to play the music, it can't play you. So you'll notice I'm often like nodding my head. I'd stomp my foot a lot when I'm playing. I was trying not to do that on this actually because it might be a little bit loud. Tommy Emmanuel says all the time, like, always tap your foot while playing. It's great advice. Keeping the rhythm together so that when you get into the transitions, you know how to transition in and out of everything. There was a lot in there, and I know it's a short and simple part. That's kind of the point of these types of videos that I'm trying to make, is like pack them with information. I know it's a video, so you can pause it, and you can go back and you can check it out whenever you need it. If you've stuck around for this long, I would appreciate your subscribe. And of course, I've got the Patreon, so I want to thank my patrons and all of that stuff. I don't just have guitar lessons, I'm also putting drum lessons and production videos up as well, lessons and tutorials. And of course, I do a bunch of original music. I would love it if you would hop on board. And have a great day. Leave some comments, let me know what you think, and feel free to send me a message and ask me any questions that you got. Cheers.